Hey, I'm Ryan Reynolds.
Recently, I asked Mint Mobile's legal team if big wireless companies are allowed to raise prices due to inflation. They said yes. And then when I asked if raising prices technically violates those onerous 2-year contracts, they said, "What the f*** are you talking about, you insane Hollywood ass?" So to recap, we're cutting the price of Mint Unlimited from $30 a month to just $15 a month.
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
Don't you love it when things are both easier and more affordable? Like when the rain washes your car for you. Or like when you save up to 10% by bundling your renters and auto insurance with USAA. Bundle with USAA and start saving. Get a quote today.
And yeah, it can feel a little bit like, oh, we've got the we've got the lesbian, and we've got the flamboyant, camp gay kind of thing, and we've got the all this. It's not a checkbox. It's like these are actual real people's lives. All the characters are so warm. Like I'm like there watching like the first LGSM meeting. I want to be there.
You are listening to episode 90 of the Flixwatcher podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of Flixwatcher podcast. I'm joined by Jay.
Hi.
And Joe.
Hello.
And Helen.
Hello.
And we're going to be talking about pride.
Come find us on Twitter at FlixWatcherPod. Visit the website flixwatcher.tv for full listings, and don't forget to subscribe to us on iTunes and leave us an awesome review.
So all films were available on Netflix at the time of recording, guys. Just as a bit of a warning, there is some bad language and there will be spoilers. You have been warned.
Hello, film fans. Welcome to this episode of Flixwatcher podcast. In our recording studio today, we have Joe and Jay. If you would like to say hello to our listeners and tell them about the podcast that you do together, please.
Hi.
Why are you suddenly so shy? Who's going to explain what you guys do together?
What do we do? We have a podcast called JoJCast, and we are also screenwriters, and so we discuss lots of different film and TV, looking at the sort of angles that affect screenwriters and different sort of problems and stuff that might face from writing those films.
And how do you spell JoJCast so people can find?
It is JoJCast.
And it's basically a portmanteau of your names.
That's exactly right.
There you go.
I don't know why we thought it would work, but...
What kind of, you said you're screenwriters, what do you write on screen, for screen?
So it's like, we've written some sitcom, so we've got a sitcom that we're hoping to move into production at the moment, and we've done some sketch comedy, and we also have some feature films which we like to think are on the way, but they're probably a few years down the line.
But still on the way.
Yeah, still on the way. So it's exciting times.
Yeah, definitely. And we're talking about Pride. Who was it that chose Pride? That's Joe. Can you tell us why you chose Pride and give us a 2-minute synopsis?
I will try and keep it to 2 minutes.
Yeah. Well, there's a buzzer and the guillotine comes down in your head. Don't look up.
Okay, cool. Well, the synopsis is that it's a true story, or based on a true story of a London lesbian and gay support group in the 1980s who raised a lot of money for the striking miners in Wales who are striking against the pit closures. And as I say, it's a true story, but it was until the film came out, a pretty unknown story. And it's kind of wrapped up in this kind of British comedy drama format. And it kind of follows the two groups and the sort of political and society kind of implications of their relationship working together.
Cool. And why did you choose it?
Well, I chose it without wanting to sound too much like a knob.
I'm interested to see what this answer is going to be.
Straight in there.
I don't know if you find this, but when you're watching films to record podcasts about, or for our term, sort of deconstructing them to like work out how the writing has worked and stuff, you kind of start watching them differently, and it's harder to get swept up in the emotion and the real kind of why the art form and why it was made in the first place. So I find with Pride, I still have that real strong emotional reaction to it. I think mostly because of its subject matter. So I really love watching it because I get completely swept away with the storyline.
Cool. And you wanted to share that with everyone else. Myself and Helen were talking recently about sometimes when there's a new film that comes out on Netflix and we're kind of thinking, oh, is someone going to pick that, or should we just watch it? And there's that kind of duplicity thing. Sometimes we watch the film because, as soon as it comes on Netflix and just enjoy watching it. But then it's even like if someone asks for it like a month later, do we think maybe we should watch it
again?
Yeah, with that analytical eye and with that kind of different gaze on it.
Yeah, it's a completely different way of watching something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's irritating.
Yeah, when we rewatched in order to do this, I kept on getting swept away again. I was like, no, I must look at this. I must analyse it.
And that alludes to one of the points I made in the show notes, actually, which we'll get to later. Jay, what do you think of this, of Pride?
Well, I remember when we first watched it, which was the day after Pride a couple of years ago, as in, the actual festival Pride, which happens around the country and around the world. And
you guys come from Brighton, which is one of the biggest prides. Most well-known prides, certainly.
Probably in quite an emotional state because, you have quite a big day and you get wasted in whatever way you do, whether it's celebration or... And I remember the day after, we were watching this kind of in a hungover state, and just totally grabbed us or grabbed me. I remember being swept up with it, and also just asking that question of, what is this real? Like, is this an actual thing? Did this really happen, or is it fiction? Because
so you didn't know before going into watching it?
Absolutely no idea. It kind of I kind of felt like it had this Richard Curtis Full Monty vibe. Which, like the humour and the comedy. And then, I was like, oh, it is actually truth. It's a real story. And that really had an impact on me, of being swept up in this story and then realising more and more that actually this was a real thing that happened. And so I think it's quite amazing in that way.
I did a bit of digging today to find out what was real and what's not, so might allude to some of those.
That would be interesting.
Yeah. Helen, have you seen this before?
I hadn't seen this before. I was surprised that it was that old. I thought it was more recent, 2014, but I thought it only came out maybe in the last year or so. So I was quite happy when you chose it because it had been on my Netflix list to watch for a while and finally got around to watching it. I just think it's a really lovely film. And the story is so fascinating. I didn't know anything about this. It's a really interesting story that more people need to be aware of, really. It's got a great cast.
A cast of super. Like if you know British film, then you know a lot of the heavy hitters in this. Yeah,
it's a really important story to be told, and it's told in a really engaging way.
Joe, you chose. What did you think of this? How many times have you seen this then? Because
I think this will be the third time
I
watched it, and I think as soon as it starts, I get this kind of real kind of activist fire in my belly, like, oh my God, I can't believe some of the stuff people had to put up with, kind of thing. So I'm in from the beginning. Yeah. I'm just so engaged and I think it's such a important story, and it was one that was nearly lost. It was something that hardly anybody knew about. And when we were researching, we found out that the writer just sort of found a tiny throwaway kind of
really
article that barely mentioned it, and it was only through kind of meeting the people who are actually the characters are based on that he could kind of really expand the story and find out what really happened. Otherwise, it could have been lost with those people. So.
When he said Richard Curtis, I really get that vibe actually. But he couldn't make I don't think he can make a film like this, which is actually based on real life and with that kind of passion that you get from it. Because Richard Curtis films for me are generally quite throwaway.
Yeah. I didn't mean it in a disparaging way. I think
it's kind of that British comedy type, isn't it? With it's got Bill Nighy in it, so
exactly.
You kind of expect that.
And it's a tone. It's quite light-hearted, and everyone's making jokes. All of these people speak like they're written by a great screenwriter. None of them speak like normal people on the streets. Everyone's quipping and witty, and that's the Richard Curtis thing, I think.
Sure.
Whereas actually the story, I think they did tell well, and we'll get on to how well they told the real life story. But I think in terms of making a story out of this and making a interesting, engaging narrative, it does really work.
Yeah. This is the second time I've seen it, and I am a big fan of it. I remember I think I watched it in the cinema. Did it come out at the same time as Pride in terms of?
I think it was definitely on the BBC one year at exactly that time, during August. But I don't know if it came out cinema now.
Brighton Pride is in August, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
The rest of the world does it in June. Other places do something.
Manchester's in August as well.
Oh, okay.
So I'm not sure how it tallies with the rest of the UK. But yeah, when I saw it in the cinema, I was like, oh wow, I was overwhelmed. I'm not quick to tear, and I didn't tear up in this, but I was just at many points of the film like, okay. But yeah, there's like revelations which are fantastic, but there's also the thing of, like you said at the start, why did people have to put up with this bullshit from the minor side and from the LGBT community side? It's just horrible. One thing at the start which kind of gets me in a way is like Margaret Thatcher at the start of it, and I've been like, I'm not conservative, but I've always kind of enjoyed that Margaret Thatcher was like the main prime minister growing up because she was like a female prime minister, and for me, like the fact that my best friend was Pakistani, they had a female prime minister, we had a female prime minister. It was just like, for me, that was like, well, isn't that a normal thing for people to have? But then to see it in this, you can see why people have that kind of demon face of Margaret Thatcher, and
because she's evil, or she was evil.
Yeah, but still, I get that, but it's still like she was hopefully championing people.
Well,
but then Theresa May
I'd like to think that maybe one day we'll get a female prime minister that's actually a role model and has a heart, because I don't think either of them have got a heart.
2 out of 2 has not been.
That's hardly a role model for anyone to look in.
And that's my point. Is like you see it and you think female prime minister, you're like, oh, for fuck's sake.
Should be, yeah,
evil.
Yeah.
And it's a shame in a way that they're kind of bearing the weight of a whole gender who are sort of going, yeah, you can represent us. Oh, don't do that.
Because you're a horrible, horrible, heartless, cruel witch.
Yes.
How much you guys were aware of the miners' strikes at the time? How old are you guys?
35.
35. So you were just born.
Knew about them growing up. Like they were read Adrian Mole, read a lot of these kind of things.
Yeah, true, actually.
They focused on that kind of 80s politics. Yeah. Whereas I was probably too young to living it, but I knew about it. It was kind of everywhere. We knew that these things happen. We knew Margaret Thatcher was this ogre by the time we were becoming rebellious young teenagers. And yeah, so it's interesting. I kind of think that drilling down into these specifics and stuff like that, because it didn't affect where we lived. In the same way that these small towns in the north, in the Wales, but yeah, it didn't affect where we grew up in the same way, but it did affect the country. You can still feel the ramifications, like the impact it had of choosing to basically throw people away.
Yeah, and it ended unions, basically.
Yeah, massively.
This is the reason why we've got the gig economy now, is because there are no unions. Exactly. No one is standing up for any workers' rights.
And I think that's a message that the film is trying to kind of really bring through, of like, this used to have a lot of power behind it.
Right. So the real people in the story, there's a few notable people.
I did a little bit of research. It's fairly accurate, I think, isn't it?
Well, I think it's accurate in terms of the names of the people and what they did, but I'm not sure if they, like you say, how they spoke and if they had that comic lilt to them.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's... Sorry.
I didn't do any more digging than that, because I quite enjoyed the film, and I thought, well, if the story's kind of right, which it said on Wikipedia, then
I think there's kind of
all right, isn't it?
Wikipedia.
Don't spoil it and say they made all of this up, because that's happened before when we've
that would be.
I don't know what you've
based
found.
On things.
I read two different things. So there's the kind of writing side, and then there's the representation side.
Right.
So some of the people that lived through it said that it's about 70% right and 30% artistic license.
Sure.
Which is
That's pretty good.
Yeah. I think Wikipedia is correct here, that it's mostly right. But then obviously you've got not a single person in the cast is Welsh. And very few of them are, I believe, any kind of LGBT, I don't think any of them are, that I know of. They might be, as we know, Hollywood is quite slow to take up on that. But I think, as you say, like the people and stuff like that, there seems to be an accuracy, apart from a couple of storylines, which really, really got me, because there was one storyline I thought, that was beautiful. The Welsh guy played by Andrew Scott. Yeah, Gethin.
Yeah. So Andrew Scott, he is actually gay. He's one of the few people that...
Excellent. So there we go. Gets a point back.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah, Moriarty.
Yes, Moriarty from Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah.
He is really good. And he brings a lot of emotion, and I found myself really invested in that storyline.
He has a good few kind of storylines. He's the owner of the shop where the community LGSM congregate, but also he's estranged from his mother because he's gay, and he's not been back to Wales. Even though he's helping all these guys in his shop, like support the miners in Wales, he doesn't go back but when he does do, it's such an awesome scene when he goes back and then they're like, "Where are you from?" "I'm from Brill." No, we're not going to have that.
Yeah.
And you can see him like welling up and saying, I came back. But then they all like hug him, and I'm like, that's one of the points I was like, oh.
Yeah. And then you get the bit where he goes to his mum.
Yeah.
And they don't do the Richard Curtis thing of embracing on the doorstep.
Yeah.
It's just left as, "Hi, mum."
Well, they don't even tell you like whether or not they make up or not until much, like you don't actually get to see what that conversation looks like.
Yeah.
And he's also the lover of Jonathan, I can't remember, played by Dominic West.
Yeah.
Who's
With
like the second...
fantastic hair.
Oh, yeah.
He looks great in this film.
He's wonderful in this film.
Yeah.
Like, I've only really
having
known him...
a lot of fun, I think.
Yes.
And bringing that real kind of lively charm and just really...
Yeah.
You'd want to know him.
You definitely
You'd want him
would,
as one of your friends.
So the Jonathan guy is one of the people I checked up on, because his story, if it wasn't true, was like, why have you kind of focused around this? And generally he does exist, and he is one of the few people. He was like one of the first people to be diagnosed with HIV in the UK, and still is alive today.
Yeah.
So I just love that. This is a story that's almost throwaway, like you said, it's a throwaway thing in an article, but this has pulled out so many awesome people. Like Mark Ashton was a real person, genuinely real person, and the lady Sian, who turns up as a volunteer for the miners.
Yes,
she's like a politician now.
One of the first Welsh MPs that's a woman. Like, I think you said at the end it was.
Yeah, but what I liked is it didn't feel like you were being set up as like, and this is a future MP kind of person. It was just, this is a really engaging character who you feel a lot of warmth for, and then just to see that at the end of like, she became this. It's like, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But I didn't feel like I was being primed for it, which was really, I didn't feel like forced or like, crowbarred in or anything. It just felt natural. But yeah, and I think I'm guessing the place you were going to with the Gethin thing was he's not.
No.
Real.
He's an amalgamation of two characters. So there were two people, one was Welsh and one... And actually the real life mother of Gethin was a gay rights activist. So that whole storyline's a little bit like, oh, I got really involved in that. But again,
but it's kind of, I'm pleased that she was a gay rights activist. That's great. But it kind of changes your perspective on like the true to life aspect. But obviously you've got a story to tell. You've got to have some license.
Yeah. I mean, how much does it normally matter to you if there's a story that's based on a true story, whether it's how accurate it is, as long as...
I think for me, and this is one of my biggest things, and I'll come back to it when I'm rating it as well. I think you touched on it on a couple of episodes, the difference between a documentary and a biopic. So I think we were doing Jim and Andy.
Yeah.
And I'm watching it and I'm enjoying it. But then by the end of it, I want to know, okay, I'd like to watch a documentary about this.
You're watching Man on the Moon?
Yeah. I want to know what's true.
Yeah.
And I got to the end of this, and I remember the first time we went, oh my God. And then it's the brain starts clogging in and going, oh, I really enjoyed that. And I was entertained, but I need to know how much of that's true, what happened next. So I think a documentary would really serve this well.
Sure.
After it. But as an entertaining film, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think it's a really good introduction to the idea of what happened. And I do love a biopic, and I love, sort of historical fiction type things. Which I don't mean like, Tudors and Stuarts, but, things based in real life. I think there needs to be like a more than 50% kind of true to lifeness going on in order to portray things and make sure that everyone's kind of getting the right end of the stick. But yeah, for me, they're kind of like a gateway for me to then go and find out more information.
Helen, what were your thoughts on the I think the LGSM characters were more true to life, but we had Sean and the lady played by Imelda Staunton being just 100% awesome. Loving this every single second of this film, you can tell. But the minor side, you have Paddy Considine, one of your favourites.
Yes.
You grew up with him.
Whoop, whoop.
Bill Nighy. What do you think of those guys?
Am I the go-to Welsh expert?
No,
I watched this with a Welshman, and I believe he approved of the accents.
Okay.
Good.
They sounded good to me, but I don't know.
It looked like Wales.
I think this is. You should write for Wikipedia.
It looks like Wales.
Looks like Wales, probably is.
Like
But
Wales.
but I mean, just the whole kind of the miners meeting the LGSM guys for the first time, and Paddy Considine. I mean, that first scene when Paddy Considine walks across the road to them and says, "So, what does the L stand for?" And he doesn't know that he's been invited by the London Gay and Lesbian Miners. I can't remember what the name. Lesbians are Gay Support the Miners. And that would have been an opportunity for someone to go, "Oh, not for me. I made a mistake," and sod off. But straight away, that guy's in the mix with them in the pub, and then he's talking in the club with them, and he
Straight into it.
Night
out. Yeah.
Yeah, and that is, Paddy Considine is one of your favourite people, and I was thinking about relaying that to also Bill Nighy. I really enjoyed Bill Nighy in this. I think you could tell he was having a good time as well, and he had
his coming out is very sweet.
Yeah.
And really kind of understated. They just did it in that kind of Mike Lee, just sat buttering the bread. I thought that was really sweet.
I thought both those characters they just had so much warmth to them, and
Nighy and
Paddy Considine.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think. Well, I'm trying to think of what I've seen with Paddy Considine, but from what I remember, he's a little bit more severe and maybe sometimes intense and scary. So it was nice to see him sort of emanating so much warmth and loveliness. I'm trying to think like what else, because obviously there's Dead Man's Shoes. And,
Journeyman was a recent one. And he director of Tyrannosaur.
Yeah, and he was in quite a lot of Shane Meadows' early stuff, and the Born. Which one was he in?
I can't remember.
The most recent one. No, not the most recent one. The last one with Matt Damon, wasn't it?
Yeah,
the last proper one.
The Guardian journalist.
Yep.
Yeah.
Born the Guardian journalist.
How much? One of the notes I sent you guys across was how much do you think he was on the nose in terms of particularly on the LGBT guys? Because you had the kid who was not yet, he was still in the closet, hadn't come out to his parents. Yeah, Bromley. You have the one who's got HIV. The character's got HIV. You got the then Mark Ashton dies. The lesbian who's an activist, and you got the lesbians who want to keep women separately. But a lot of those things were actually true. So I found it, again, kind of from the kind of film critic point of view, I found it quite hard to swallow on this kind of rewatch. But then when you see that a lot of that actually was true, I was like, well, that's actually, yeah, okay, fine.
There's kind of, normally there's some sort of reason why stereotypes generally exist, because they're based on something at some point. So they do kind of feel a little bit like, oh, here's the kid who can't come out to his parents, and he comes out to his parents and he has to leave home, kind of thing. But that is someone's story, and it's quite a lot of stories.
Yeah.
And
I think it's quite nice that it shows kind of how broad LGBT is, and yeah, it can feel a little bit like, oh, we've got we've got the lesbian, and we've got the flamboyant, camp gay kind of thing, and we've got the all this. It's not a checkbox. It's like these are actual real people's lives. So yeah, I guess it depends how much you kind of know about it when you're watching it as to whether it feels on the nose or not. I think all the characters are so warm. Like I'm like there watching like the first LGSM meeting. Like I want to be there.
Yeah,
that's such a wonderful supportive environment, and knowing that all these people are coming together, I just find it one of the most beautiful things. And LGSM actually still exists today. It's now Lesbians and Gay Support the Migrants, so it's still a support group, and still very active and kind of broad in that way.
But I think that's really interesting because you say broad because it's the broad spectrum of LG, like lesbians and gays in the film. I think from a cinematic point of view, it is really broad strokes, down to the amazing disco number that wins over the whole Welsh town. And if it was in another film, I think that would have really angered me. And there were moments like that. You've got the woman on the committee who is the evil Voldemort. She's in her twitching the windows going, ugh. And it feels a bit panto at times, and there are really broad strokes.
Yeah, she's written quite two-dimensionally.
But because it's historical, and because you find out that Jonathan, I can't remember his surname, the guy who Dominic West plays, says, yeah, back then I really was the flamboyant one. He did do those types of things. It does take the edge off a bit because it's not...
Yeah, played for the film.
Yeah. And it does play for the widest possible audience. And I think that's what another thing Andrew Scott said when he was doing the press for this is we want this to hit as many people from children to from people to 80, because that's the people it hit at the time. And so if they made a kind of really gritty one where there was more kind of anger and more violence and stuff, which there probably was. I'm sure there was far more attempts on the shops. I'm sure there were far more beatings and stuff during this whole period.
Yeah.
But that wouldn't have worked because it wasn't kind of getting across this message that most people could sit down on a Sunday afternoon and watch with the whole family. And so I kind of, there's two parts of me that go, it would be interesting to see a more historically accurate, but then I totally understand why they're going for this widest demographic.
Yeah, I'd probably say I don't think the Welsh would have been won over that quickly.
No.
I mean, the Welsh aren't sort of valleys now. It's still pretty dicey.
It's not, yeah.
To be openly gay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, in the articles I read, I can't remember which one it was. I think it was Jonathan's recounting of the enactment, but he said we were welcomed with open arms. It was obviously, it's a bit like, I've not met a lesbian before, but you guys are helping us out, so that's definitely worth something. I don't know how much of the committee side of things played into it. I'd like to know more about that side of things, and that's where I guess the documentary, what I found, didn't open up anything, but I think from the LGBT side it seems like it was really like very true to life. And Imelda Staunton's character was true as well, so I'm liking that hers and Sean were real people.
Exactly.
Should we, anything else, guys, before we go into the scores?
There was just one thing that I wanted to add to what Jay said about the broad audience thing, and that was, I saw something that the writer Stephen Beresford, I think he's saying, he was saying that if he's writing, I think he's worked mostly in theatre, but when he's writing something, he tries to go for something that has got broad appeal and then tries to find a message that he can, tap into. But yeah, he is writing for wide audiences, and I think that comes across so well. So obviously he achieved it. It's really nice. Yeah.
And we see in a similar way when Gethin goes to see his mum, Gethin gets beaten up later on, but you don't actually see that actually happening, which is also, it's a nice kind of trope.
Yeah. And I think,
I don't know if I could have handled it.
Touching on what Helen just said, like, there are valleys in Wales where it's still probably in 2018 difficult to be diverse in any way.
Yeah.
That's different to them. But then other people will go there and have a totally different experience. I think by being the broadest strokes, like we said earlier, the christening at the end where he storms out of his house and tells his sister that she looks bad, it can be read as a bit OTT for some people, but then some people will be like, no, mine was even more, bigger, and I smashed a window, and, so I think it is telling so many different types of stories, and I think it pretty much nails it.
And the Pit and the Pervert was a real event.
Yeah.
And happened just literally around the corner from here, the electric ball, and the poster was the same.
Of course.
Yeah.
It was like,
right down electric ballroom.
Bronski beat.
Can we just shout out to the best drag queen name I've ever seen?
What was that?
Martha Scargill. That was amazing.
That is a great one.
Are you a fan of RuPaul's Drag Race?
Huge fan.
I've never seen an episode, but we had Hurricane Bianca we reviewed on here.
I haven't seen that.
I imagine that's quite odd watching without having seen any of the I don't know.
I mean, we didn't really recommend the film.
No, okay, right.
It's not very good.
Even people who had seen
even the person who picked it didn't really recommend it.
Yeah.
We haven't watched it probably for that reason.
There is a follow-up I saw on Netflix.
I know.
Yeah.
Did he recommend it to you because you watched this?
It must have done.
Yeah, your recommendations must be
Yeah, it's got no
Odd.
chance.
Yeah.
It's got no chance. Right, let's go to the scores.
This episode is brought to you by Abercrombie. Build your fits of the day with Abercrombie's newest denim drop. Here's where to start. Abercrombie's 90s straight jean goes with any shirt from tees to sweater polos. Super versatile. Their loose and baggy jeans are more trend forward, so you can grab those and go out with your friends. Abercrombie's denim fits come in a range of washes. Build your looks around Abercrombie denim. Shop online or in store.
Welcome to our scores. So they are all out of 5. You can have a 0 and you can have decimal places. And we will start with you, Jo, because you chose it with the recommendability.
Okay. All right. So I have already recommended this to people. So I feel like by default
It needs
should
to be pretty high.
5. However, I don't know. I think if there was a documentary of this story, maybe I'd recommend that more highly. So therefore, maybe I might just drop it down to like a 4.8.
Yeah.
Yeah. Solid score.
Jay.
Yeah, I'm kind of around the 4.5 because I think it is a great film. I really enjoyed it. I think, as I said before, I think anyone can watch it pretty much from age of 8 to age of 80 and get something out of it. But just because I think it does need that added level for me of historical understanding, I would go, 4.5.
Helen.
I'm going to go for a 5. I think if someone asks, should I watch Pride? Definitely you should watch Pride. And I think it really, really does offer itself to the widest audience. You know, this is something a 10-year-old could watch. This is something your gran could watch. This is something that everyone should watch. And it's such an amazing story. And I think it just needs to be heard by more people.
I loved the older lady. I can't remember what her name is. Even though I think that was a bit on the nose as well with...
The vegan Delia Smith.
The vegan... Oh, one thing I want to know about lesbians. Are you all vegetarian?
Yeah.
Of course they are. Whatever, I don't know, according to preconceptions. I'm going for a 4.5 again. 4.5 here, I think. Super lovely film. I think I was going to go higher, but I think the fair point, I would really, really want to see a documentary about both sides of this. And
But that shouldn't take away
I know
but it does a bit though.
a 0.5.
Helen's almost won me round by
Helen,
talking.
you've got your scores. I've got mine. You put your 5 down. I'm going to go.
I mean, I would also like to see a documentary, but a documentary doesn't exist at the moment, and all we've got is this.
You are totally
There's a
right.
gap in the market, guys.
I'm still going to stay with my 4.5.
I'm going to stick with my 4.5.
Repeat viewing score, Jo.
I've already watched it several times. So again, I think it might be quite high. I mean, it's not going to be something that I can sort of, I've watched it at the weekend, but I'll watch it again tonight kind of thing.
What stops you doing that, considering you've watched it a few times, 3 times?
I think it's actually quite rare I would do that with any film.
Sure.
I think because I have such an emotional connection with it, I think it would be a little bit draining to do that. But however, I picked up on much more with this last viewing, particularly like the sort of break off with the other lesbian group, the like lesbians
Against pit
protesting
closures.
pit closures, yeah. And I suddenly realised like, that story's not really told much. It's like given about a minute, maybe 30 seconds. So, and it was interesting to pick up on that. But again, I was like, I want to know more about that. So I think it is worth repeat viewing, but I think maybe I won't be watching it again for another, like say 6 months to a year. So I'm going to go with a 4 on that.
What were some of your more emotional beats in there that hit you?
I find Jonathan's character very compelling, particularly because the fact that he's still alive, like it's and there's a lot of contributing things in there, like things like he talks about like medicinal cannabis, and literally like week before, medicinal cannabis became legal in the UK and stuff like that. Lots of
is
like
it?
that, yeah.
I didn't know that. Well, I was knew about Canada.
Yeah,
No, in the UK.
In the UK, yeah.
UK, only for certain things. But
Okay.
yeah.
He made you like disco as well, you know. You
yeah.
very rarely like disco, and
Yeah, I've got really like strict rules on disco, what disco I like, but I really liked that track in the Working Men's Club.
Yeah. God, I miss disco.
And I was like, I want to be at that party.
I did like the one woman starts singing and everyone joins in on a song I didn't even know.
quite
Yeah, that
quite
was really
rousing,
powerful.
wasn't it?
Yeah.
That was-
Yeah. We accept you guys. We're going to start singing.
Yeah, well, that's a very Welsh thing to do. That's what happens in Wales, isn't it?
I don't know.
Just everyone starts singing.
I used to go to Real quite a lot as a kid. I never got anyone singing. Saw anyone
I
singing.
mean, I'm
together.
basing it on stereotypes.
Yeah,
so,
gosh.
You know.
Jay.
I am going to go for a 4.5 because I think I was going to go lower, but then actually thinking about it, it is such a kind of, and you don't get these films very often now, but I feel like it's that kind of Sunday afternoon bank holiday. Like it's got this nice tuning ability. Like I was going much lower because I felt personally, I don't know how much I'd rewatch it, but then I thought if I had a family, you could kind of sit and get embroiled in the characters again, and it's got this nice, you know, all the different arcs, and yeah, I like it. It's got something about the 90s 80s family films. Sorry, yeah. For me.
Helen.
Well, I've only seen it once. I'm probably not in a rush to see it again soon, but I think I would probably watch it another time to get a little bit more of the details back. But it's quite a long one. It's nearly 2 hours. So
Did you feel how did that time pass for you? I guess that's more engagement
swift.
score thing, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I mean it didn't feel long, but to sort of say I'm going to immediately watch it again, that does factor in. So I'm going to go for a 3.
It gets a bit Return of the Kingy at the end. Didn't you not think? Like
A few different endings.
you're kind of like, okay, we're now seeing and now we're here.
We have to say goodbye to all
We
these
do, yeah.
characters.
But there was just a moment where I went, oh, yeah, we're off. We're doing the Frodo thing now. Like, just a little bit too many endings, but
It didn't feel like that for me this first time.
Yeah, I don't like Lord of the Rings films. Okay. So, I don't know. I don't know. No need for me to say that. I just have to throw that in there anytime I can do.
Is that because of all the endings? And so?
No, because it's so long.
Son of Drill and
The original 3 are really good though.
This is the worst thing because I prefer the Hobbits.
whoa.
So repeat viewing score for Pride. This is my second time. And
I love that he tries to move on from that. As if it's just
Just going to drop that there.
I'll happily
Drop the Hobbit bomb in the room.
It's like people who prefer Ghostbusters 2 to Ghostbusters 1.
Yeah, I heard that one.
It's the second time watching it, and I hadn't felt the need to watch it again but I was super pleased when you did, and I was super pleased to kind of be overcome in the same way I was in the cinema. I thought it was like, oh shit, it does resonate. It still resonates, and I guess there's a lot of things with politics nowadays where it's sexual inequality, homosexual inequality, racial inequality, that all these kind of things for me are part of the same thing. So I think anytime there's injustice portrayed on cinema, I'm like 100% for the people, and I just think the story was told really well. That said, I'm not sure how much I'll see it again. I think this is probably relating more to the engagement and small screen score. So I think it's going to be quite low for this, but I think the other score is going to be quite high. So I'm going to 2.5. Yeah, I think it's quite a hard watch actually. Small screen score.
I don't watch many things on a very small screen unless I'm like on a plane, and then it's just literally like switch off brain stuff.
Yeah.
So nothing's going to be like super high for small screen score. Obviously we do watch things on the telly, but
yeah, this is more home viewing score,
home
not
viewing. So it's not like
handheld,
not cinema.
Tablets,
Yeah.
So I mean, I've only ever watched it on a small screen, and I've enjoyed it every time. So let's go with a 3.5.
Okay.
Was that too high pitched?
Yeah.
3.5.
Jay.
Yeah, I've only ever seen it on a small screen and really enjoyed it and engaged with it totally differently in both times. And I don't think that was entirely because I was watching it for this. I think I did get completely swept up with it the second time, and I wasn't expecting to. I think if you told me a couple of years ago that I would be watching this again, I'd be like, no, I don't think so. But I really did. So, I'm going 4.5. which I think is my score. That's the
Score
only
the
thing I can
force.
give. That's the only thing I can give.
Solid scores.
Sorry.
There are the numbers.
Yeah, I know.
Helen.
I only saw it on Netflix, and it does kind of have that sort of a little bit made for TV, but not in a bad way feel to it. I think probably because it's kind of English
British film.
about it. Yeah,
The
Britishness.
Mike Leigh kind of film.
That kind of feel. And I mean, it's on Netflix, and if you haven't seen it, you should definitely see it because it's there, and it is fine to watch on a small screen. So I'm going to give it a 5.
Where would like Trainspotting rank for you guys? Is it a quick poll for a small screen score? I've never seen it in cinema.
No, I haven't seen it at the cinema, but I would like to. Maybe a 3.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think it would have been.
You think it's very cinematic?
Yeah, definitely.
I saw the second one at the cinema. I've never seen the first one.
Yeah.
And the second one, even though I don't think it was a patch on the first film,
it's just so
it just
in your
looked-
face, isn't it?
Yeah.
Imagine if you went to saw it at the cinema on the big screen, you'd be like, "What the fuck have I
It's
just
seen
watched?"
that toilet
Yeah.
scene,
Yeah.
all the baby scene and stuff. It was,
I feel like-
too much. That would be,
And the
that was so
sound as well.
Yeah, sound is.
Whereas this
meant
is a
to
bit
be.
more kitchen sink.
Yeah, I mean,
You get one shot of the Welsh countryside, but mostly it's shot
it's more about what happens rather than like, we had to wait
See what
6
happens.
weeks
I
to
think so,
get
yeah.
this landscape right or anything
Yeah.
like that.
I think a lot of the. Do you think when it's snowing and you sort of van going through, was that a CGI van?
I didn't think. I just thought.
I thought
it
that
does snow in Wales.
I know it snows in Wales, but then that makes it a pain in the arse to film that. So I just thought maybe just put a CGI van through there.
Maybe that was just the week they were filming and it was snowing, and in real life there was no snow.
Could be, artistic license.
No one checked whether there was real snow during that time.
I mean, that would have been amazing if they'd gone back and checked the meteorology. Like, we're going to be so accurate.
Oh yeah, I'm not talking about the accuracy. I'm just saying I noticed that. I thought when they just shot it, I thought that van doesn't look real there, and it just jumped me out.
Rewatchability.
I think it's a 5. I don't, apart from maybe the big singing number, which was quite nice in the cinema, and I kind of, it was one of those things where I thought I'd quite like to know what the song is. But yeah, 5.
Nice.
Engagement score.
I was so engaged with this film that I didn't even notice that the van might look a little bit CGI.
That's just me being a very picky CGI nitpicker.
I think I just went, oh, that's a nice snowy scene. Don't get that these days.
Did you miss the Beast from East when you in Brighton?
Oh, no, we didn't. No,
Okay.
we just, being in a city and stuff. I don't often drive out to Wales when it's nice.
Sure.
I am fully engaged from the moment it starts. Like, I feel like 5. I feel like if I say 5, there might be something else that is more engaging further down the road in my life. So therefore, I think I'm going to give this a 4.8 just in case, because I don't think this is the most engaged I've ever been with a film, but I certainly was very engaged.
Wow.
Jay?
I'm going all guns in with a 5 because I just think it's engaging not only the characters who, as we talked about, the actors really do bring it to life. Like they're such a kind of wonderful, warm cast. But then also it tells this story that's really heartwarming and enjoyable. But then it's also, as you pointed out, quite dark at times and upsetting and true and political. So I think, kind of engagement. Can't really beat that level of
Engagement.
breadth. Yeah, engagement. Yeah.
Helen?
I was really, really engaged from start to finish, despite the 2 hours runtime. But I just could not resist the urge to go, oh, is this person real? Oh, I'm going to check up on them. And, oh, what's the actor's name who also played Woody in This Is England? And, that's the Vauxhall Tavern. It is, isn't it? Yeah. So I can't give it a 5 because I was doing a little bit of, ooh, is this real?
The thing is, I know exactly.
But yeah, still really high, 4.5.
Yeah. I'm going for 4 this time. I think the first time, I think just because it kind of it did get me thinking about how on the nose is it or not. So it took me out a bit this time, but I'm super pleased retrospectively that a lot of that is true and a lot of this, Jonathan was real and he was that person.
Yeah.
For example. So I'm going for a 4 for this. gives us an overall score of 4.32.
Pretty high.
Yeah,
Pretty good.
it's pretty damn high.
given.
Yeah,
Pretty damn
and
high.
anything over a 4 is really high.
Yeah.
How do you think it compares to other kind of films about the 80s and like Britain and, you know, that kind of...
It's kind of, it reminded me the most of Brastoff.
Yeah.
I was thinking,
It's the most kind of similar in
Yeah.
sort of tone, cast level, and slightly the story as
possibly.
well.
Isn't it? Yeah, because that was all unions and
Yeah.
It reminded me a bit of Full Monty because it was a similar thing of, yeah, quite British kitchen sink, but with a bit of fun and a bit
And
of...
real heart.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Excellent.
A less kind of, what's the word? Less intense, This Is England.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because also Brastoff does have that really, really heartbreaking moment in it as well.
God,
No
I haven't
spoilers
seen
for
that.
other films.
Yeah. So it kind of has that balance of sort of, you know, this is kind of like a happy story, but also, you know, these are real people's lives, and you know, this wasn't all kind of happiness and supporting others. Thatcher's fault.
Can you guys tell everyone listening where we can find you online?
You can find us at JoJCast, which is JoJCast, and that's pretty much on everything. That's Instagram, Twitter,
On Podbean, it's JoJCast Pod.
JoJCast Pod.
There's
and
always
yeah,
one. There's always one platform that doesn't quite let you have your name.
But yeah, we're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, pretty much everywhere that you can find podcasts.
All of the places.
Acast, Stitcher, that lot. But yeah, we're quite... We like to engage with people on social media. So
we like
give us a shout.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, guys. It's been a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming on.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for listening. As always, you can find us on iTunes. Do subscribe and leave us a nice review if you feel like it. You can find us on Twitter at FlixWatcherPod, and the website is flixwatcher.tv. Thanks, as always, to the mighty people for their mighty, mighty tunes, and thanks to Brendan Russell for his awesome editing skills.